Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me in another collective tarot reading. For those who are new to this channel, my name is Wing, aka the Tarot Mechanic. When I first started this channel, I primarily focused on tarot deck reviews, but it was always my intention to expand into readings and teachings. My goal for these readings is to both provide insight into the topics being discussed, as well as to use them to demonstrate how I interpret the cards. Later on, when I create a teaching series, these readings may act as a companion to provide live examples to the philosophies embedded in the teachings. Many collective tarot readings on YouTube are periodic in nature and address their audience by astrological signs. For example, these readers may post readings on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, and they will do separate readings for each of the astrological signs so to address concerns of various audience. Here on my channel, my readings are topic based, aiming to address issues and topics relevant to our current social atmosphere. Today's topic is one that I have been reading a lot about in the past few years: the increasing loneliness epidemic. Every generation faces their own unique challenges, and for today's generation, the effects of loneliness is one of its greatest obstacles. While loneliness is something that we all experience occasionally, it becomes a great concern when it lasts for a prolonged period of time. Studies show that loneliness can have a great impact on our physical and mental health. One study suggests that it can be as bad for our health as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Another study goes deeper into the health consequences and notes that extended periods of social isolation can increase the risk of dementia by 50% and early death by 26%. It can also increase the risk of obesity, heart diseases, and depression. What makes this an especially concerning issue for this generation is that the amount of people who experience loneliness appears to be growing exponentially. Today, 15% of young men say they don't have a close friend. This is a 5 times increase from the 1990s. And women aren't faring much better. Many women reported that they have lost touch with friends during the epidemic. For this topic, I will be conducting 3 separate readings to address the 3 main cohorts by age: the elderly, the adult, and the youth. While I understand this method of categorization is very broad, I hope that this can be a good starting point to initiate this conversation. So this is going to be our first reading, and this one is going to be the first cohort, which is the elderly. Before I get into it, I just want to talk a little bit about the deck that I'll be using, which is the Monsoon Tarot. I chose this deck because the art feels right for this topic. It's very beautiful, but it has this almost a lonely vibe to it. But at the same time, it's not pessimistic. There is also the beauty is just there's some sort of nostalgia and a grace to it that gives you hope. So I think this is a perfect deck for this reading. It addresses the loneliness at hand, but also gives us a sense of optimism about the future. So I have chosen this deck. And now, without further ado, I will be selecting the cards. And as this is a deck that spreads very well, I will be choosing my cards this way. And this is going to be my typical 4 card reading. And I just randomly go through the deck and choose. Some people really take a lot of time choosing. They feel around for the card that feels right. I tend to just not put too much thought into my choosing, and it always just ends up being the right deck, right cards anyway for me. That's how I feel. But of course, how you choose to deck your cards is entirely up to you. And as I am prone to do, this is my favorite spread, which is 3 cards on the bottom and 1 card on the top. And a lot of times my cards, each position, don't have a particular meaning. But for this set of readings, I am going to assign meanings. The top card is going to be the cause. So I feel that with the different cohorts, there is a different cause for the sense of loneliness we feel. While we all experience the sense of loneliness at different ages, but I feel like depending on the generation you're from, it stems from a different reason. So this is the cause. And then I'm going to split this into a mind, body, and soul type reading on how to address the issue. So this this is going to be a solutions orientated reading. So this is a cause, and how do we address it to deal with this ongoing epidemic, this growing concern? And I don't know why I'm playing with this, but I saw it in the corner here, and I thought I'd move it, and then I realized I didn't like the way it looked on the camera. It's kind of distracting, so moving it away. But sorry about that. Here we go. So in here we get the Ace of Water, which is the Ace of Cups, Ace of Earth. So first off, we see a lot of aces here. The Queen of Water and the the Two of Fire, sorry. And so the cause is the Ace of Cups. And generally with Rider-Waite-Smith decks, aces are positive signs, are positive, like they talk about hope and opportunity, potential. But here, as for the cause of it, again, I don't, not again, I haven't said it in this video yet, but for those who've seen my previous videos, I do say that I don't actually read reversals. Um, you see here, this is a deck that is, the back is reversible, but I generally try to leave all my cards in the same way. So I only shuffle it in one direction. And if I happen to occasionally, whatever reason, like it ends up being reversed, I generally tend to turn it back around. So whether I read the card in its reversal or in its upright position really just depend on the context. And the cause of loneliness is generally not something positive. So I'm going to take it in a less optimistic version than its original upright position. I'm so in this case I am reading it as almost a uh, as a Marseille, sorry, I was having trouble with the word. Marseille deck, whereas when you read pip decks in Marseille deck, one is little and 10 is a lot. So ace isn't better than a two, isn't better than a three. Whether it's a little or a lot is a good thing or a bad thing depends on the question. So I would say this is a little of cups of hearts of emotions. So I think the cause of loneliness for the elderly is a decreasing social circle of loved ones around them. And so, how do we address this for the elderly? And this is the mind, body, and spirit reading um, of the mind, body, spirit. So, here in this position of the mind, we have the Ace of Earth. Now, what would that mean? And again, I talk as I interpret. So, I will pause every now and then. And I even as I speak, I might like, oh, no, actually, I'm saying it out loud. It makes no sense. Let me reverse that. So, I do that. So, do bear with me as I interpret that. And again, because this is a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it is useful to interpret it with the card itself, like the position, so the Ace of Earth, the Ace of Pentacles, as well as the image. So here we have a tree-like being holding out a crystal. And the position of the mind, so I would talk about this, even though it is Earth, I would interpret this as a need for clarity of removing things in our lives and going back to the basics. So, in the earth sense, like to not get boggled down with the unnecessary. So, physical burdens like things, materialistic things, and just focus on the source. Okay, and we're going to come back to this card. So, this is the general meaning for this card so far. And here is the Queen of Water for the position of body. Water is again cups, and Queen is a card of nurturing. So, I would say this is a card about nurturing, about taking care of ourselves. And then here we have Two of Fire in the position of the soul, spirit. So this is, I would say, like soul, but I would say in this reading, so I would say this is our emotions. So our mind, our physical body, and our emotions is how I would interpret this. And in the Two of Fire, so the Two of Wands, we have this being, a naked being, so almost like a fool, and he is embracing, walking up to a angelic or godly figure. So he is almost like walking into a higher form, a higher spirit, a higher plane, um, and into position of the emotion. So what that means is stepping out of our norm and looking forward to new things. So altogether, in a reading for how to address an issue of loneliness for the elderly, as it is caused by a decreasing social network, is how I am interpreting it. And how can we address it in a positive, in a meaningful way, is to first of all, clear the mind, to focus on the positive things in life. And I know this is easier than it sounds, and this is like a really generic advice. But if we focus on what is new, what like, and again, we will read this ace as in the positive sense of new potentials of opportunities. So instead of focusing on what is lost, we can focus on what we can still be gained. A lot of times in our the one of the benefits of being in the elderly, so hopefully if you are retired, you can learn new things, develop new hobbies and new habits. And while I know financial constraints is an issue for some elderlies, but there are a lot of things that we can still participate, a lot of hobbies we can experience that doesn't require a lot of money. So I would say here in your mind is focus on learning new things. Like keep your mind active by engaging in new activities, engaging in new opportunities. And in our body, it's obviously, I think this is very obvious message, take care of ourselves physically. I feel like, and then that's one of the things that I would, the article I was reading, when you are lonely, you don't feel good about yourself. And when you don't feel good about yourself, you don't take good care of yourself. So just remember to physically take care of yourself, eat well, sleep well, um, drink lots of water. Don't neglect your physical body because it is a it's this vicious circle. You don't feel well, you don't take care of yourself, and because you don't take care of yourself, you don't feel good, and it just becomes this cycle. So end that cycle of physical neglect. And then lastly, we have the two of fire, two of wands in the position of of our emotions, our soul or spirit, how to take care of ourselves is it's literally what this I feel like this image is very literal. Look up, look up. So just it's a constant effort of reminding yourself that happiness is a choice at the end of the day. You can look forward to new again it goes back in hand with this thing look for with this very first card is whether you're looking forward to new opportunities or you're looking backward. And here you see here there's a clock here, so if there is a concept of time in this particular card again, so I want to say this card in this particular position is the constant reminder of looking forward to things, um not backwards. I think as we get older and older, there are more and more memories. And if we don't focus on the present, on the past, we end up dwelling on the past. And at certain days, you do want to, like, if you, like, on a day you want to just bring out your picture book and look at albums of good times, that's great. But you can't live in the past. And I think that is a reminder for the elderly to always constantly have something to look forward to. So here is our reading for the elderly, and the next two will be on adults and the youth. We are now going to choose our cards for the next reading, which is to address the concerns of loneliness for the adults in this generation. And who do I mean by adults, elderly, and youth? It's I know by for census purposes, there is an age and that we talk about, but I feel like in our current generation, ages aren't necessarily like physical ages aren't necessarily representative of how we feel in life. So it really is just how you categorize yourself, whether you feel like you fit into the adult category or elderly or the youth. It's some people like you may be graduated, you may be working, but you live at home with your parents and you may not feel very ready to move out on your own. So would you consider yourself a youth or an adult? It's really entirely up to you, whoever you resonate more with. Sorry, I'm drinking. And now, so the cause, we have the Six of Fire. Oh, here it is, a card that comes up again. The Two of Fire in the position of mind, Five of Water, body, and spirit, the Ten of Fire. So in the position of the cause, we have the Six of Fire, which for this deck seems very similar. Like the imagery is kind of similar. No, sorry, this is the Six of Fire, the Six of Wands. I was thinking of the Six of Swords, where it's the boatman carrying, but this is here is a Six of Fire, which actually it's still very similar in imagery. I think similar concept, although the imagery at first feels more close to the swords. It is a person that is sailing with stars ahead. It's being guided, and there is a person with wings that's spread out. So it is an image of, I think, of championship, of overcoming obstacles. And this is actually more prevalent here. Like they are sailing, even though this person looks kind of confident and carefree, almost like Jack and Rose in the Titanic. At the moment, like I'm the king, or Jack, "Well, I am the king of the world." Um, there's a sense of confidence in there, but you can see that they are on rough terrain. You can see here, but they're gliding courageously forward. So that is the Six of Fire. And so, as for the cause of loneliness, I actually am going to take this in a more literal sense as being alone in in this rough sea. You are guided by like stars in the sky and celestial beings, but this person is utterly alone. I feel like we are increasingly isolated. We, in a very physical and mental sense, we don't have the same sense of community we did like when we were young. I think for adults who've been around, let's say like for adults, like anywhere between 30 to 40, 30 onwards, I would say. And even those younger, you may feel this, like if you, growing up in this generation, so much has changed in our physical way of living that back in the days, the way to get in touch with friends is to physically get together for the most part. And you may talk on the phone sometimes, and you may talk on the phone a lot, but it's not like our primary means of maintaining friendship is physical presence. But I feel like that is no longer the case. And I do think, and I think anyone who is older than a certain age, when they have experienced part of their lives that was pre-digital, pre-online, will understand that like things used to be very different. There was a lot more physical contact, and I feel like there is something about physical contact, physically being around one another, that makes you feel less lonely. Even if you're just two people sitting there, like just reading in the same room and not talking, there is a sense of camaraderie, a sense of closeness that you feel with the physical presence. And I think that is eroding with our current world, with people working from home and especially after the pandemic when we got used to like online physical video conferencing. I think that is one of the reasons for the sense of loneliness in today's society, the lack of physical contact. So, how do we address it? So, we have mind, body, and spirit, or emotions in this card, let's say. For the Two of Fire, again, it is here the Two of Fire. I would associate against with this a sense of optimism. The way we interpret it for the elderly is about moving forward, focus on what you can achieve in the future, as opposed to focusing on what you don't currently have. And again, this is a real, I feel like a lot of these like reading, especially for the collective, it feels kind of cheesy and generic. Like it's like how do you deal with them? Have a positive mindset, essentially, what this is saying. And as generic as this sound, it really is a genuine advice. It really is meaningful. Like it's a lot easier than sounds. Um, you do have to like, and I think here it's just this you see here like the actually walking up towards like receiving, being receptive of the divine. It is a conscious choice to move forward, and every time you feel yourself feeling down, feeling like lonely, feeling gloomy, feeling hopeless, if you can even just focus on being positive 1 second at a time. Just can you just take 2 seconds or a minute out of your day and focus on gratitude, focus on the sense of the the good that we have that it comes with our modern society. Yeah, okay, we are more online, but we have more convenience, we have more knowledge. So just try to, if you can't focus on your personal life, focus on the modern times we live in. What is good about it? And it's just being able to do it 1 minute at a time. If you can't do it for 1 minute at a time, do it for 1 second at a time. And eventually you're going to be able to do it for 5 seconds and build on that just positive mindset. Like I can't stress that enough. And I am guilty of this as well because we all like to like just waddle in self-pity every now and then. But whenever we can, just remind ourselves, can I move away from this feeling? Can I move away from this negative mindset for just 1 minute, just 1 minute today? And then we move on to the middle card here, the five of water, which in this position stands for our body. How do we take care of ourselves? So we have the five of water, which is a feeling of loss. This person's weeping, they're in the water, and in this position, I actually would read this and is like because even though this is a card about consolation, so you would try to. My first initial instinct is to try to see if I can read it in a positive light, but I do think here it is actually about loss, about losing certain things. In the position of our bodies, I think for our generation especially, I feel like we are in the first. I feel like we're one of the first generation of consumerism, of like brand name clothing being an obsession, of like showing off about our wealth, passive aggressively showing off, uh, and I think that actually consumes a lot of us. So for a physical, materialistic thing, I think something that would help us a lot is if we can manage to not fixate on having things, of possessing things, of being wealthy, of being pretty, not and focus on the inner things. I think this card is like one of the things that we can feel less lonely is to rid ourselves of a materialistic mindset. Because and how does that associate like and how does that help with our loneliness? It's because I think that mindset is a separationist mindset. When we are focused on those things, what we do subconsciously or consciously is we're competing with others. We don't feel camaraderie with others. We feel competitive, and that causes isolation. And here in the last position, we have the 10 of fire, the 10 of wands in the position of our emotions. And here we have like a person holding up the roof of a mushroom. So this is a similar concept as the traditional 10 of wands, which is a person carrying 10 heavy sticks. It is the concept of the burden of responsibility. And I think this can be interpreted both ways, and both ways would be equally accurate. On the one hand, I feel like certain people in our generation genuinely feel the responsibility of all humankind upon their shoulders. And when you constantly live in stress, it can create a sense of loneliness because if you resent the world for that, right? So I think we need to abandon stress that is beyond our personal control. But at the same time, I generally don't. I just posted a one about this. I don't generally interpret Ten of Wands as a negative card. It is the burden of responsibility. But the key word here is responsibility instead of burden. Responsibility gives us a sense of pride, gives us meaning in our lives. Even though it can be heavy, it can be overwhelming at times. If we adopt responsibility in our lives, we feel a sense of pride. And I think while this doesn't address loneliness in of itself, I think feeling confidence will help us approach the world differently, will help us approach one another differently, and it gives us joy, and positive people attract others. So I think if we are constantly negative, we drive people away because negativity is not fun to be around with. I think everyone knows people who are just constantly negative, and if you have those people in your lives, they're probably family or really really good friends that you've known for a long time. If you just as an adult meet a person that's really negative, you chances are you don't want to be their friend. So I think if we own up to our responsibility and we take charge of it and we feel and we get a sense of responsibility for our lives, it will produce a sense of pride that will feel rewarding and in the end lead to feeling of joy. So, whatever it is, I think we all have different sets of responsibility in our lives. So, this is different for everyone. For some of us, it's financial responsibility. For some of us, it is emotional responsibility. Do we constantly blame others, blame the world for everything that doesn't go our way, or maybe it is a physical responsibility back to here. Like we don't take good care of ourselves because we feel like, ah, we're not at a stage yet. Like, I'm young. There's all I can still like, there's still plenty of time to exercise and eat well. Like it's do so whatever it is, and chances are you know what it is. Most people unfortunately have areas in our lives where we're less responsible than we like to be. If you can somehow take a different mindset and take responsibility for it as opposed to avoiding it or blaming others for it, I think in the long run it will help you develop a more positive personality that will make others drawn to you. So this is my reading on how to address loneliness for the adults of our generation. This last reading is for the youth in our generation, how the youth can address this issue of loneliness. And before the cards turn over, I do want to just throw in my personal opinion and let you know, because I do think that when we do tarot reading, our personal opinions, our knowledge, and our biases does read into it. How we interpret the cards is ultimately based on our own knowledge. We can't interpret something or give interpretation of something that we don't understand. And my personal feeling is that I do feel really, really sad for the new generation sometimes. The world that they grew up in, and it is a wonderful, very exciting world. And this is probably coming from a perspective of someone who is a bit older now. And like I'm one of those people that's always felt old, like even as a child. I always tell people in a semi, but not really, joking way that I was born with the soul of an 80-year-old. So technically I'm like in my 120s, 130s right now. So which makes me very wise. No, joking. But I do kind of I'm one of those old people that also feel like is more afraid of change than embracing it sometimes, I do have to admit. And so when I see the new generation, it's a world I completely don't understand. And especially those who grew up in their primitive years during the pandemic, I just I just feel so sad for them. And this is the perspective that I'm coming from. But what are the cards saying? So here in the position of cause, we have King of Air, which, to be quite honest, I wasn't expecting. And then we have another king down here. So whenever like there are multiple cards, especially in like a smaller reading, like 3, 4 cards, when same numbers or the same suit comes up a lot, it is interesting. So let's see as we keep on reading whether we find any trends about that. And we have King of Earth, a King of Pentacles in the position of mind, 8 of fire, 8 of wands in this position of body, an ace of water again. So this one came in the up in an earlier reading as the cause for the elderlies, eh? So this is the ace of cups in the position of our spirit, so our emotions in this sense, and for this particular reading. So, what is the cause of today's generation of loneliness? King of Air. Air is the suit of intellect, a suit of our the thought process. And I personally, with my own personal biases in hand, as I earlier mentioned, I attribute the cause to the internet. I know I'm one of those people who's like, oh, the interweb is the cause of all evil. Um, and it isn't. Uh, it is a tool for us to use as we will. It and any great tool can be used for to generate good or bad. And I think we are at the age, I feel like we are still like, even though the internet's been around for a while, the social media, like all this is actually very, very new. If you're young, you may not realize it because you grew up in this generation, but people 20 and under, or so 20 or so and under, you are the first generation that grew up online. This is like the digital Lord of the Flies. You are the first generation to experience this, to live it as your actual lives. For a lot of adults and older, our online persona is our second reality. But for a lot of people who are younger, this is your life. This is your persona. There is no distinction between your online network and your real lives. So, and I think this is a dangerous thing. And the king, and why I associate the online with King of Airs, first of all, I think I kind of jumped a little bit there. So the internet is a source of knowledge, and so the king here is the person with all knowing, and that's why I associated it with the internet. And also, not gonna lie, I will admit that I kind of thought that going in, so it was easy to justify this card with that interpretation. But having that said, I do stick by that interpretation, and so I do think the cause of loneliness is the online world because, as I mentioned in the last reading with the adults, I think we do need physical contact to feel close to people. I do, and even though you are very comfortable, even though you video chat, I do think there is something different than when you can't, when your friend calls you on phone, like you can see their face, but like if they're laughing, you can't just crying, you can't just give them a hug or, put your hand over their hand. Like I think there is a difference in that. And I think that does cause a sense of loneliness. And I think with online, I feel like a lot of people are also afraid to be who they truly are because they're afraid that what they say, what they do will be recorded and then it goes online and then that's you may have said something stupid or you just happen to look dumb in that one particular moment and when they snap that screenshot and that is what you're known for the next 4 years. I think that fear of being caught at our worst prevents us from being our best. And I think that is the cause for young people. And in terms of how do we address that now with our minds, the king of earth? So the earth, again, is of physical experiences, of physical things, of the real world. To combat that, I think we need to get our kids offline and make them go out a bit more, make them see people in real life. Like I think people our age always have this saying, like the like people always feel like there's no consequences when they're hidden behind a screen and they can say whatever they want. A lot of those awful things that people say to one another online, you won't say that to another human being when you look them right in the eye. And when you have, not only because you're actually not an evil human being, but also because there's now consequences. You're, even if you're not afraid of hurting others, you're afraid of retaliation. Online, you can say something nasty and log off and have dinner and then and feel like you won the conversation because you ended it, because you walked away from it. You don't have that ability when you're physical in person. You have to have conversations with people, and it's not on your own terms. When someone says something you don't know how to respond, you can't just take an hour and think of something witty to say. And I think this difficultness, like this awkwardness, this clumsiness of reality, actually deepens relationships. And we don't need a lot of friends in real life. I think they say like most people like prior to the internet, a good healthy social network is like in the teens, like 12, 13, 14 people, with most people having like anywhere between one to three people they consider close friends, and that's it. And I think being in person allows you to develop that with people. Like, so you get a chance to be yourself, you get the chance to be at your best and your worst. And if those people who've seen you at both states and still want to be around, then you have a friend. And once you have like, someone you can call a friend, it will help ease that sense of loneliness. The next card is the Eight of Fire, which is the Eight of Wands in the position of our body. So, uh, what does this mean? So, this is talking about like the eights is a card about this Eight of Fires is a card about momentum and movement. And in the position of physical, our bodies, I think this is saying, again, it all reinforces, I think it reinforces what we talked about here, the courage to get yourself out there, the courage to move in the right direction. And I think it starts with you. It starts with each and every one of us. Like, oh, maybe like I was like I think like I was talking to my nephew the other day, and he's just saying it's weird to just ask someone to hang out. And for our generation, it's normal. Like, what else do you do other than ask your friends to hang out? How else do you hang out with your friends? But to ask, like, oh, you want to just come over after school, or like, you want to go to hang out in a mall? Like, he thought that was an awkward thing to do. So to be honest, I just don't even understand why that's awkward. That's how old I am. But I find that like if having that motivation, the courage to make that switch, to do that, if you feel it, if you agree with this reading, of course. If not, just ignore this whole thing. But I think with the body, like this is the mindset, and then following up with that mindset to just ask someone, hey, you want to just go hang out at a mall or go for bubble tea, it it, it I don't think it's as weird as you think it is. I think the person you ask may feel special to be asked, may feel excited that they're trying something different. But hopefully you already, or maybe better yet, you already have a group of friends where you feel comfortable hanging out with, like in real life. And just keep that up. If you already have it, keep up that. Don't take that for granted, especially for youth. Like, I think it's so important. Don't take your friendships for granted. Um, and so now we have the last card in the Ace of Water, the Ace of Cups, in the position of our emotions. So um, I think here it is talking about, again, in the sense that we're talking about aces in a more Marseille pip deck style, like something small, um, but also in the Rider-Waite-Smith sense, something potential, something that's growing. If you are not confident in your social circle in real life, like in your friendship, it is okay. It's don't feel like if you're lonely right now, if you don't feel like you have a lot of friends, don't feel like it's the end of the world. Feel like it's an opportunity to start something. I personally didn't have a lot of friends when I was in high school. Like I didn't have any lot. I didn't feel like I have a lot of close friends. Like I had people I sat with at lunch and stuff. So I was very fortunate in that sense. But I didn't feel close to a lot of them. And what I did is I and it's hard because when you're young, every year feels much longer. Like time goes by a lot slower when you're young. So 4 years of high school can feel like an eternity. But just know that if you're young, this is just the beginning. This is not the end. There is an opportunity to put yourself in a different environment and learn. Ever since elementary school, I was just waiting till university where I can be with like people. um, if you're young right now, like maybe you don't go out too often for because you're not old enough to go out by yourself, but or maybe if you're young adult, like if you're an adult, maybe the opportunity will come with a new job, or maybe it will come with signing up for a sports team or an art class. Find the opportunity to grow. Like there is an opportunity if you, especially because this is reading applying to young people, especially if you're young, you have all the opportunities in the world to explore new social circles, to explore new experiences with others that can connect you with others. Um, like if you're an anime fan, go to an anime convention, um, or just anything to be yourself with people. Again, a lot of experiences. And I know we live in a consumerist world where we can monetize everything. While a lot of things can feel expensive, a lot of things aren't. Like joining a book club doesn't cost a lot of money because you can always borrow those books from the library too, right? Joining, like if you live in a city, like a walking, like a weekly walking tour and stuff. So there are things that don't cost money. It just costs a little bit of time and effort. So put in that effort if you are lonely to meet those people, to meet like people. Um, and I think it is important, like the word like people, to have similarities, to feel like people that you feel like is your people. Once you find that, you you will feel that sense of community, which will ease that sense of loneliness. And so these are my three readings for how to address loneliness in the different cohorts of our society. I hope that it was helpful to some of you. I hope this is a good way to initiate that conversation. And if you have any experiences dealing with loneliness, or if you have any comment on the readings that I just made, please feel free to drop it in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for your time today and have a great rest of your day.